are listening to Lady-ish, where wellness gets unfiltered. This is the podcast where real talk meets whole self-transformation. I am your host, Autumn Noble O'Hanlon. I'm a coach, healer, author, and wellness guide, and I have created this unfiltered space for women who want more out of life, but on their own terms. Every week, we will dive into the messy, beautiful, and often contradictory layers of wellness, covering everything from career shifts and body image to energy healing, intuitive living, fitness, burnout recovery, and creating change that actually sticks. Whether you're chasing a new chapter, healing old wounds, or just trying to reconnect with yourself in a loud, overwhelming world, Lady-ish is here to support your evolution. You can expect honest conversations, coaching wisdom, holistic tools, spiritual insights, and permission to be a little bit of everything and nothing that you're not. Because wellness isn't one size fits all, and neither are you. Welcome back to the podcast, my friends. It is March, so that means we're kicking off a new topic for this month's podcast, including the topics we'll be using on the premium podcast series. And the topic we're going through over the next month is money and worth, including all of the fun shadow work that goes along with it. This topic really kind of started the whole concept behind the premium podcast because many months ago, I was doing some shadow work and I came to the awareness that I judge people who display obvious wealth. Certain types of cars, certain types of purses, expensive jewelry. And I recognized and saw a pattern of me judging them for what they had, characterizing them as rich or wealthy, and then therefore thinking about them in a certain type of a way and thinking about the people that they were in a certain type of a way. And it really shone a light on some work that I needed to do. And so I went down kind of the rabbit hole exploring shadow work, money, wealth, and worthiness. And I was doing it as part of my own business growth and expansion, because what I recognized in that moment was that my judgment of people's obvious wealth or material things was impeding my own growth and success, because it's nearly impossible to develop wealth, grow your wealth, while at the same time having this aversion to wealth and wealthy people. And so I think my whole career in business has been this sort of push and pull of trying to push through that judgment and become one of those people that I was always judging. And so in order to kind of move into the higher level and break through that barrier, I had to do a lot of work on my own stories around money, because money is just not about the economics of it. It's about the energy of it, your nervous system responses, and how all of that drives you to show up in your pursuit of money or relationship with wealth in general. And so the premium podcast this month is going through a 30-day shadow work exercise and journey through money and worth and value. And it is one of the shadow work series that I started and I've kind of built on that really changed a lot for me. And so it is really the 30-day shadow work series that made me think this work is really important and kind of spurred me to launch the premium podcast. So here we are in March, and I thought, I'm going to go back to kind of what brought all this together for me and offer money as a topic this month and go through that shadow work on the premium podcast. I am releasing the first few days of that 30-day shadow work journey about money. I'm releasing it for free on my regular podcast. You can check it out here. If you want to take that journey even deeper, it's $5 a month. Check it out. You can cancel at any time. But today, on this side of the podcast, we're going back to the very beginning. And this is where the shadow work journey starts as well. And this is where I had my big aha. And it's around our money stories and how those stories subconsciously hold us back. This is a topic that you are not going to want to miss. If you're wanting more money, wealth, and abundance in your life, we are going to get into all of the what's and hows and unpack how we figure out if we might have a money story that is actually driving money and wealth away from us. So let's go ahead and dive in and just acknowledge out of the gate that money is really one of the most emotionally loaded topics, even for women who are high achieving and extremely intelligent and might have a ton of it. And that may show up not just in their ability to earn the money, but it's what they do with it and whether they're able to keep it. And so even if you have a money story like I did, that doesn't mean that you're not ever going to be able to create it, but it certainly means that it's going to impact how you interact with it once you have it. And if you're actually able to use that income to generate real, lasting, meaningful wealth. One of the things I find so interesting about working with powerful, successful humans all over the planet. And that is that we can talk about all sorts of vulnerable things. We can talk about career strategy, your relationships, and burnout. But a lot of the time when it comes to money, people kind of shut down, and that's where things start to go a little bit quiet. And I can share so many stories of women that I have met through coaching that really want to coach and they really want to invest in themselves in coaching. And the same thing on the personal training, yoga, and energy work side of my business. There are so many of those women that want to make that investment in that part of their life. But when it comes down to the actual discussion of purchasing, they say things like, well, I just bought, a $30,000 purse, or I just bought a $100,000 car, so I need to wait. And it's just those fascinating little choices that we make instead of investing on ourselves. And it sort of begs the question, what is that about? And why do we do that? And 9 times out of 10, there is a unconscious money story driving all of that. And I'm hopeful that today we can kind of shed some light on maybe what your money story is and what it's doing to your current hopes, dreams, and goals. Because here's the thing about money and money stories, we all have one, and we all have some anxiety or fear or shame or maybe even avoidance around money topics. I know for me, within my marriage, talking about money is very hard and uncomfortable. It's not something I ever saw my parents discuss. And so it's a habit that I have had to learn to develop comfort with. But we all have some aspect of money that makes us uncomfortable. So if that's you, you are welcome here, and you're certainly not alone, because money tends to activate something deeper in us than just pure logic. So I just want to run through a little bit of an experiment here and see if we can bring some awareness to some of your discomfort around money, or maybe even shine a little bit of a light on your own money story. I want you to think about your income right now. Think about that number, or if you're not sure, take a guess. Think about that number, close your eyes and scan your body. And I just want you to check in and notice what you feel. If there's any sensations that come up, any tightness, or maybe you feel calm or avoidant or energized. I know sometimes thinking about money can make people feel energized, but in a almost like fight or flight kind of a way, like very fast moving, kind of a panic, energized, depending upon where they think they match up with respect to income. On the other end of the spectrum, it's always curious, when you think about your income, does your mind run to possibilities, or does it start thinking about debts owed or things that you've accumulated or more things that you want? Or does it run to worst case scenarios? I don't have enough, I'm going to run out. So just take a beat here, maybe pause the podcast and just check in with yourself, thinking about your income, your salary, whatever you might receive this year, that number, and checking in with your body and your mind and just noticing what comes up or where your mind runs to. Because here's the thing that's so interesting about money. It's not about math and it's not about the numbers. It's about the meaning that we ascribe to them. Before you ever had your first job or earned your first dollar, we learned or observed what money meant. I know for me, growing up on a farm, I had 3 brothers and we kind of lived in a very small town. And in order to go school shopping, we'd have to drive a couple hours into one of the bigger cities around us. And when we would do that, my mom would go into my dad's office and she'd take a check out of the check register, and we'd kind of like sneak away. And I know he was well aware, and I know that the check would obviously come back and he would see what we had spent, but it just kind of made me feel like we were doing something naughty, like buying nice things for ourselves was naughty or indulgent or shameful. And years later, when I was practicing law and I was an in-house counsel with this Fortune 300 company, I had all this money and I was buying all these crazy things. It made me very uncomfortable. And I always kind of tried to hide our wealth. And anytime I would indulge in something nice for myself, which was pretty rare, I don't really shop a lot, and maybe there's more there for me to unpack. But even when I did, I just felt badly about it. Like I would almost hide it from my husband and not even want him to know what I had purchased or how much it cost. And we have completely separate finances. I don't know what he does with his money, and he doesn't know what I do with my money. But there was always a shame and guilt around doing nice things for myself, and kind of a judgment that I guess I sort of expected other people to lob at me too. And looking back after doing this work, I can see very clear instances in my life, in my childhood, where spending money felt guilty and shameful. And, no shade on my parents. We all have these things that we sort of notice and misinterpret and internalize, and it creates our own identities as we grow up. And that's why this work is so important. For other people, money may trigger feelings of safety or instability. And that certainly is going to drive how you show up with money. If money triggers stability, there may be part of you that's always chasing, that never feels safe enough. You're never going to have enough. And so there's always that deep insecurity about money and safety, no matter how much you accumulate, which is really interesting because on the other end of the spectrum, if money is tied to instability, maybe money was tied as a kid and it was a driver of conflict in your home, there's a good possibility that you may be hoarding your money, living well below your means. And there could be a lot of fear tied to money. And that dictates how you spend it, how you live, and how you let yourself feel about the money that you accumulate. There's so many different variations of how we relate to money. It could correlate to power or control, love or conflict, freedom or pressure. I think for me, as I sort of advanced in my career, money started to feel more and more like freedom and independence. And again, looking back at my childhood, I remember when my mom got her first job off of the farm. For many years, she was raising kids on the farm, and she's sort of like the number one farmhand. I mean, that woman can do anything on the farm. And at a certain point, I think we just had so many kind of farm guys around helping, and then my brothers were helping. And my mom decided to get a job off of the farm. And that was kind of a big deal. And as the only other woman in the house, I remember watching her change and watching her go and buy things with money that I think felt more like hers. And I think I even remember hearing her say a couple times, "Well, it's my money. Like, dad doesn't get to say anything about it." And there was this beautiful freedom that I felt like she stepped into when she was able to leave the home and kind of get her own job. And eventually she became a dental assistant, and then she was making really good money, and she was very proud of the work that she was doing, and it changed her. And I remember as a little girl, I think that's the first time when I started to equate money with freedom. So then fast forward, I'm in my legal career, and I'm realizing that I'm not happy. I have all of these things. I'm buying all these things. I have the house, and I'm just not happy. And then I started to see that money and that income as a means to freedom. And watching her transform and kind of step into her own path, I think gave me the strength to say, you know what, I'm going to take this money that I have and I'm able to generate on my own. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to let it open the door to my own path and my own freedom and pursue whatever I want. And anyone who has any say about it, get out of my way, husband included. And, thankfully he's an amazing person and that wasn't an issue for him. But I think watching that example of money equals freedom was partially what I needed to see and internalize, to recognize I don't have to stay in this job forever. I have all these judgments about rich people to begin with, so I don't really want to be one of those. And now that I am one, I'm not really happy being that person. What if money is just a means to an end for me to find the real peace and freedom that I'm looking for? And I think that kind of spurred me to take the leap. So most of us don't consciously choose our money beliefs. We inherit them. We create them based off our own observations, usually as a small child. And so I would encourage you just to start thinking about, what do I think about being rich people in general, buying nice things, buying expensive things, and where do those ideas come from? Similarly, for me growing up, we were in a very small rural town, but we were also part of a big tourist community. There were beautiful lakes where I grew up. And so, during the winter and fall, it's a very small rural farming community. You know everybody. And then the summer comes and it multiplies tenfold and you don't know anybody. And there's all these fancy cars and those, all these rich people and their lake houses and fancy boats and, things that we didn't understand. And it became a very us versus them dynamic. I think not necessarily because my parents taught me that rich people are bad, but because it felt like such a divide. It was our town 9 months of the year. And then 3 months of the year, the tourists would come in and with all of their fancy things. And you kind of felt less than. And I think, for us kids that were locals, we'd work at all the fun, like touristy places and then hope that the fancy tourists would invite us over for after hours or drinks or take us out on their boats. And that was kind of, we got to live a little bit of that life through them. But it wasn't because we were one of them or we were just as good. It's like, we were kind of the locals and, they were different than us. And so I think that definitely instilled a distinction in me and some judgment around rich people and how they looked at us and thought about us. Another thing to consider when you're exploring your own money beliefs is just, was money even talked about when you were a kid, or was it secretive? And that's a big one for me. I know, I think in 1994, there was a huge flood in my hometown, and this was before farmers had insurance for flooding. And I understand now that it was a very precarious financial time for me and my family. What we did see was that dad was bartending at the local bar and mom was waitressing. And like, we didn't really think anything of it. And so it wasn't that they were intentionally keeping it secret from us, but they never wanted us to pick up on the tension. And so now here I am married, and I don't know how to have conversations with my husband about money. It makes me very uncomfortable. It makes me feel like something is wrong. And again, no shame on my parents. I think they did it right, but it's a skill set that I've had to learn to develop because wasn't a witness to it growing up. I think for a lot of people that I know, when they were children, when bills would come, tension would get very high. And that can create a very heavy story around money, and instability and insecurity. Was success celebrated or was it resented? This is another one I think I kind of feel pretty closely to. I think when you grow up with a lot of siblings, there's always going to be differences in successes and skill sets. And I had a couple of brothers that were these tremendous college athletes. And I was kind of, smart, and I was popular. And I think my parents always thought, like, she's good, but they never wanted to make anybody else feel bad. So I think a lot of times when I would get an accomplishment or an accolade, it was sort of like, let's not really talk about it because we don't want to make anyone else feel bad. And so as I kind of moved on with my life, I remember when my book came out, my mom was like, yeah, I like Googled the other day and I saw you had a book. And, she was like, kind of like, what the hell, Autumn? And it's been like that, I think, for a long time. I'm very uncomfortable sharing accolades and awards with my family and with the people close to me. And I think it does kind of go back to, as a child, where success is celebrated, or are they kind of resented, or are they hidden? Because you don't want to appear to be better than like the rich people, that we see. And so I think it's all kind of tied together, even with something as simple as celebrating success. And the last one that I've mentioned several times is asking yourself, as a child, were wealthy people admired or vilified? That's a big one for me, as I said. And what it really comes down to is that as children, we don't really interpret and kind of parse through meaning or bias or perspectives. We just absorb. And so whatever we were witnessing, we sort of took it as gospel unconsciously and just accepted it as true. And that's why shadow work is so important, is because it asks us to go back and find the root of those conclusions and stories and ask ourselves, is there real belief there that we want to continue to see the world through that lens, or is it time for a new story? All of this is so important because money shapes our behavior beyond logic, even into adulthood. And the way I see this come up again and again with the successful people that I coach are instances where they know that they should negotiate, but they still freeze, or they judge themselves for wanting to negotiate, or they're pretty sure they're being underpaid, but there's some guilt or shame around asking to be paid fairly. Oftentimes we know that we're qualified, but we still undercharge. And that is tied to worthiness and your beliefs about value and money. One thing I noticed personally for myself was that even as I made more money, I never really felt any different. It never gave me the peace I was looking for. And if anything, I felt more anxious, not less. And I felt more like that sort of instability, kind of panicked, wanting more, chasing this end zone that I was never really going to get to, because I think I was self-soothing that insecurity, instability feelings around money, thinking that more of it would fix it. And in the reality, the only thing that would fix it is me doing my inner work and changing the way I was thinking about wealth in general. What I have noticed in my business now that I primarily left the practice of law is that as I think about who I want to be and where I want my income and my business to grow, I had to really let go of these ideas around wealthy people and obvious signs of wealth. Because if that's what you're wanting the fancy car, the big vacations, and not having to work all the time and being able to travel when you want, if that's what you're wanting, we can't also be judging people that do those things. And so for me, I had to start thinking about money as a reflection of people's energy and belief in themselves. And that was a real turning point for me. Instead of seeing money as something that signified someone who's selfish and they're not using it the right way and they're being ostentatious and they're spending it on ridiculous things and they think they're better than other people. What I started thinking about money as was simply a reflection of their belief in themselves. They believe in themselves so much that they charge more, that they go after hard things, that they do more, they ask for more money and they negotiate without shame or judgment. That's the way I look at money now and people that have money. It's more of a curious observation of like, these people must really believe in themselves and believe in their value and believe in their worth so much that they always ask for what they deserve, that they always negotiate. And those material things that we see is simply a reflection of their ability to show up for themselves again and again and again and live in that belief until it creates abundance. And that for me was a real turning point in how I see obvious signs of wealth. And so when I see, like a really ridiculous expensive vehicle driving by me on the interstate, I sort of look at those people and think, gosh, that's amazing that they can believe in themselves so much to create wealth like that. I wonder how they show up for themselves every day. Those are the thoughts that run through my head. So now when I'm driving on the interstate and somebody passes me in like a G-Wagon, instead of thinking like, oh, you're such a dick, you just cut me off in your G-Wagon, you think you own the road. I think that's so amazing that you're able to create that for yourself. I wonder how you show up for yourself every day to create that much abundance. You're able to spend it and buy whatever you want. I don't get into wondering about, do they give back to their community? Are they really a good person? Are they just a narcissist? And that's why it's so easy for them to believe in themselves. I don't get into any of that. I just live in this belief that people's accumulation of wealth and material things is a direct reflection of how much they value themselves and show up for themselves again and again. Because here's what happens instead when we're not living in that belief. Your nervous system is always going to prioritize safety over growth. And so if your nervous system equates wealth to any kind of an insecurity or a judgment, I'm not really worth that much. If I negotiate, they're going to judge me and think that I'm just greedy. If that's the energy that we bring to conversations about money and wealth, your nervous system is going to say, like, do not proceed. This is not the path that you should go down. And that is why we have to change that mindset to, I'm worth it. I'm going to charge what I want. I'm going to charge, the value that I give. I'm going to negotiate for my worth. We have to learn to get over there because otherwise our nervous system is going to completely shut us down. And it becomes this awkward tug of war of trying to believe it and trying to negotiate it, while at the same time, energetically, we're kind of closing in on ourselves, pulling back and playing small. I mean, think about the energy you bring to a negotiation when what's running through your head is they're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm greedy. I'm not really worth it. I don't know enough. That energy comes with you in the negotiation. It's going to create a very different result from I am worth it and I'm not leaving here until I get some reflection of my value. Similarly, if money meant instability or conflict, again, your system is going to resist pursuing money or asking for more. And what ultimately ends up happening in all of those types of situations is just self-sabotage. And that's kind of our nervous system's protection in disguise. So we have to kind of figure out if I'm bringing weird energy to money and how I'm spending and how I'm protecting it and how I'm thinking about it and how I'm asking about it, asking for it, or even talking about it. If my energy is weird on any of those levels, self-sabotage is probably going to follow. And it tells us that we have some shadow work to do to change how we are interacting with and thinking about money. And trust me, this doesn't show up in really loud ways where we quit the job or we just, don't do the thing. It's usually much more subtle where we'll procrastinate applying for a job until the job is closed. And then there's that like relief that we didn't have to kind of fight for more money or apply for something better. Or we'll procrastinate or put off the conversation about a raise or fair compensation. It's these subtle little things that we do that logically we can kind of talk ourselves into, but really on a deeper level, it's just our nervous system trying to protect us because when it comes to money, there's some sort of a discomfort there that we haven't attended to. I want to take a moment here to share with you some very real examples of limiting beliefs around money and achievement that I see again and again and again with very high achieving individuals. And these are people that are running companies. They're general counsel of huge companies. They're working for Fortune 500 companies. They're partners in law firms that are worldwide law firms. I mean, these are people in very powerful positions. And I want to share with you some of the things that we have unpacked in coaching that shed light on these types of limiting beliefs. One that comes up again and again is this idea that I'm not enough yet, or I don't know enough yet. And so the way that drives them to show up is that they have to overperform to deserve more income. And if you've been playing this game as long as I have, you know that when we overperform, the only direction that goes is right at a brick wall called burnout. And that is not helpful when we are seeking more compensation or advancement. And so it's a subtle form of self-sabotage. It all comes back to this idea that I don't know enough or I'm not enough yet. And so we overperform, crash and burn, and really just set ourselves back because of what that belief drives us to do and how it drives us to show up. I don't deserve it. This is a big one. And I see this in women that are wanting something and they'll say, I don't want to work this much. And then they'll turn around and they'll say, but I work a lot less than a lot of women that I know. And I make really good money and I get to work from home and da, 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 da. They go on and on and on and on about all of the things that justify overworking or justify not being appreciated or being taken advantage of at work. And it all comes back to this subtle idea that I don't really deserve what I've got. So how dare I ask for more? In order to ask for more, I've got to be justified in it. And they're already giving me so much. We sort of self-abandon those desires because at the root of it all is this belief that I don't really deserve it. They've already given me enough, and kind of dismissing those goals. I see that all the time. If I earn more, people would judge me. I get that a lot, especially for people like myself who did not come from families with a college education where that was common. And so there is a certain discomfort level of how much we earn and then going back to, our roots and feeling that discomfort. And so it sort of tells us I don't deserve to earn more. Look at what I have in comparison to all these other people. They're just going to judge me. And how dare I? How much do I really need? And that's not really the question. The question is, am I being compensated fairly for the value that I'm giving? And so we use that sort of rationale again to self-sabotage and talk ourselves out of these things. Or another one I see quite a bit, I don't want them to judge me if I ask for a raise because wanting more just makes me greedy, or it's this subtle belief that asking for more equates with greed. And again, that comes back to some of these deeply rooted stories from childhood and observations about wealth and wealthy individuals. And that is beside the question of whether or not you are entitled to a raise or advancement. It comes back down to simple economics. What are you giving for value and what are you receiving in exchange? And is it consistent with the market and your expectations? It has nothing to do with what someone thinks about you as an individual. It's about the value that you offer. Because again, if you think about money as a reflection of our value, what we're giving, what we're creating, and our belief in our value is how we get it. It has nothing to do with whether we're greedy or not. If you provide a ton of value, it doesn't matter if you're greedy. You're entitled to make more or advance. And so we have to kind of separate this idea of money and value and worthiness from these sort of lower level personal judgments. If you have worked in a professional career for as long as I have, I've been practicing law for a long, long time. There are a lot of very wealthy attorneys that aren't that great of people. But the fact of the matter is they're good at what they do and they provide really good value and they ask for it. And so we have to start separating these sort of personal judgments about who we should be in order to receive value. I want to kind of summarize all of this into this idea that sometimes we unconsciously self-sabotage, not because we can't succeed or because we're not good enough, but it's because we haven't expanded our capacity to hold success and receive value in exchange for our contributions. And I really want you to hear me when I say that, self-sabotage is an unconscious thing that happens because of these beliefs that we're not aware of, that we're carrying, that dictate how we show up. That doesn't mean that we can't do it. And that doesn't mean that we can't succeed. But what's really happening is that we haven't expanded our understanding and our capacity to believe in our success, to hold our success, and to really believe in the value that we offer and ask for money in exchange for that value. And the second you can transform that and start really believing, I provide a lot of value and I expect to be paid commensurate with that value. Once you start living there, everything will change and the self-sabotage will go away because you just know, this is what I'm worth. Take it or leave it, pay me or don't pay me. So once we start letting go of those beliefs, like, I don't deserve it, I don't know enough, I'm not good enough. If I ask for more, they're going to think I'm greedy. Wealthy people are greedy. We can let go of all of those and just live in the space of, I provide tremendous value and I expect tremendous pay in return for that value. That can be huge in changing how you show up in your business, no matter what kind of business you're in, because that's the energy that you need to hold that space and attract money and worth in a different way than you are right now, carrying those beliefs with you. So as we move forward this month with this topic, every week I'm going to be releasing a podcast episode that talks about money and the energy of money. On the premium side of the podcast, every day for 30 days, there's going to be a shadow work exercise. And I'm telling you guys, this is the shadow work that really kind of opened everything for me and made me realize, there's a real need for this type of work and this type of guidance out there because it can change everything. And so I'm going to release the first few days of that here on the podcast. And then if you want to continue that journey, it's available to you on the premium podcast for $5 a month. I really want to leave you with this idea that if something in this conversation today stirred something in you, it's not random. And I'm hoping that you come away from this with some deeper understanding and information about your own money beliefs and the energy that you bring to money. And I think that's tremendously powerful. And I hope that you leave with something. But awareness is powerful. However, that is not what's going to actually rewire the patterns. We have to invest in more work beyond that. It's sort of like if you go to the gym for one day, that's wonderful and fantastic and amazing. It's not going to change your body. It's not going to change your life and your health. But if you show up for yourself consistently and put in the work, things will change. Your body will change, your brain will change. Same thing with this type of shadow work and coaching. Awareness is helpful. Information is helpful, but we have to consistently challenge the patterning in order to rewire those neural pathways and start showing up with a different energy around money, worth, and abundance. My goal at the end of this month for all of you is to leave you as someone who's not chasing more from a kind of nervous or insecure energy. I want you to transform that energy into someone who can hold more and believes that they're entitled to more because they are in touch and aware of the value that they offer. And that is it. And that's the transformation I'm really hoping to guide you on through that shadow work series and even here on the free podcast as well. If you have any questions about any of that, you can email me. All my information is in the show notes along with the information on the premium podcast, or head over to autumnnoble.com to learn more about my work. I still have an opening left in my 6-month container for coaching. We will meet 12 times over the course of 6 months. We can work on money beliefs. We can work on identity. That seems to be a really hot topic right now. There's a lot of professionals that are trying to transition and kind of figure out what's next. Done a lot of work with purpose and identity, and I would love to invite those of you listening, if this is stirring something in you, to join me on that journey. You can find all the information on all of that in the show notes. All right, my friends, thank you so much for being here. And as always, thanks so much for sharing with your friends and your networks. Until next time.